Television has long connected us to the world beyond our walls, but sometimes what emerges from that screen is far more disturbing than anyone could expect. TV can be a wild ride. Behind all those slick, carefully planned shows, there are moments that catch everyone completely off guard, sometimes even live on air. This new series is all about digging up those unexpected, unforgettable incidents. And there's no better way to kick things off than with a story that might not be famous, but still sticks with me to this day. It was a regular Saturday, June 14, 2008. Over in Japan, Television Miyazaki was broadcasting live like usual. That day, they were running a game show segment straight from the rice paddies of Takachi Hocho. The rules were simple. Two players stood back-to-back on a small wooden platform right above shallow water and mud. When the buzzer sounded, they had to push each other off without turning around. Last one standing wins. The loser? Well, they get covered head to toe in mud, and the crowd gets a good laugh. The first round was lighthearted and fun. One player wiped out and sank into the mud, sparking laughter all around. Everything was rolling smoothly, filled with that energetic and quirky vibe Japanese shows are known for. Then, things got interesting when the contestants called over one of the hosts, Tatsuchi Yanagida, to join the action. He was hesitant at first, but eventually said yes, which definitely pumped up the audience. But as soon as the match started, it was clear Tatsuchi wasn't exactly built for this kind of physical game. Almost immediately, he lost his footing and toppled off the platform. But instead of just a splash, he hit his head hard in the muddy water and suddenly went completely still. The water was only about 6 inches deep, but the mud underneath was thick and solid. Unfortunately, that's where Tatsuchi suffered a serious neck injury. Right then, he lost all movement below his neck. It was a major accident, but nobody realized how serious it was. They thought he was messing around, so they left him there, even throwing more mud on him as part of the joke. What no one understood was that Tatsuchi was in real trouble. He couldn't move, couldn't lift his head to breathe properly. About 15 seconds passed before someone noticed something was wrong and tried to help, pulling his head partially out of the mud. But still thinking it was all a prank, they put him back down in the same spot. It's hard to watch this moment without feeling uneasy. The laughter and joking contrast sharply with what was actually happening. Eventually, they got him completely out of the mud and back to the studio. He narrowly escaped a disaster. Experts later said that if he'd stayed there just a few seconds longer, it might have ended much worse. Luckily, Tatsuchi survived. Years later, according to his own page, he adapted to his new reality and even appeared on the show again. A shocking twist in what became one of live TV's most unforgettable and unexpected moments. At first glance, this video feels like just another stunt on TV, but behind it lies one of humanity's most terrifying fears: being buried alive. Just imagine, trapped in total darkness, no space to move, air slowly running out. For most, it's a nightmare. But for some thrill seekers, it became a challenge, something to beat in front of an audience. The most iconic figure to ever take that risk was none other than Harry Houdini. Houdini made several attempts to escape from underground burials. In one of his earliest tries, he was sealed inside a coffin and buried under 6 feet of dirt. He nearly made it out, clawing through the earth, but passed out just before breaking free. He kept trying, pushing the limits of endurance and timing. In some cases, he stayed buried for over an hour, but always needed help to surface. He had plans to attempt the feat again in 1927, but died before he could. Since then, escaping a live burial has become an infamous stunt, one that only the boldest performers dare to attempt.
I got a bad feeling about this thing.
Fast forward to Halloween night, 1993, an illusionist named Bill Shirk decided to honor Houdini with his own buried alive stunt, only he cranked up the danger. Instead of dirt, he would be buried under wet cement. And to make things harder, he'd be handcuffed inside the coffin. Even before things began, Shirk was uneasy. The pit seemed too wide, and that could mess with the stunt mechanics.
Decides to go ahead.
I think we gotta go.
Tons of concrete are poured. Suddenly, the concrete sinks. The coffin has been crushed.
As the crew started covering the coffin with the first layer of dirt, Shirk's voice came through the walkie-talkie. He was panicking. He asked them to stop. He wanted out. But with the cameras rolling and a live crowd watching, he took a deep breath and said, "Let's keep going." Then came the cement. As it hardened, something felt wrong. The level started to sink, bubbles formed, and a loud crack echoed through the pit. That's when the team realized the coffin had caved in. A mix of cement and dirt crashed through, completely burying him alive.
A backhoe digs and digs, and crucial moments pass. Shirk cannot be found.
The rescue team jumped in, digging fast. Somehow, against all odds, they pulled Shirk out, barely conscious, gasping for air. He was rushed to the hospital with broken bones and internal injuries, but he survived.
Thank God he spared my life on this one, and it'll be a while before I'll do one of these.
Even after that close call, Shirk didn't walk away from danger. He kept doing high-risk escapes and more than once came close to serious injury again.
Shirk climbs in the casket. The snake goes in first, but there's a problem, and Shirk has to get help.
But others weren't so lucky. 2 years before Shirk's cement stunt, a man named Joe tried something similar, only his setup was far less safe. Joe used a homemade coffin made of plastic and glass and planned to be buried under a mix of soil and cement. He had done a basic version of the stunt before, wooden coffin, just dirt, and made it out. But this time there were no safety tests, no backup crew, and no emergency plan. His parents were in the crowd, so was a TV crew. Everyone was there to watch him make history.
It was a cold night anyway, and when it sunk, I just knew trouble. We're in trouble. It's not fun anymore.
But it went wrong, fast. As soon as the cement was poured, the weight became too much. The coffin was crushed instantly, triggering a complete collapse. The audience panicked. People rushed in trying to help, but no one knew what to do. They had no tools, no training, just raw fear. By the time rescuers got to him, Joe was already gone, buried alive beneath cement and dirt in front of a crowd that couldn't save him. This story takes us to the sleepy village of Buttsfield, deep in the English countryside. A peaceful, uneventful place, until the day it became the center of one of the most disturbing incidents ever broadcast live on British television. Albert Dryden lived there, a quiet man recently retired from the steel industry. With time on his hands and a piece of land in his name, he came up with a plan to build a small summer house for his aging mother, and something he called a bunker, meant for protection in case of any future disaster. But trouble started almost immediately. The local council, Derwentside District, denied him a building permit. Dryden ignored the ruling and went ahead with construction anyway. Instead of building above ground, he dug into the earth, claiming his structure was under 2.5 meters tall, which, according to him, made it legal. It didn't. The council pushed back, tensions grew. Eventually, a new planning officer, Harry Collinson, took charge of the case. He issued an official demand: stop the construction and demolish everything already built. Dryden fought back in court. He lost. Given a 3-month deadline to tear everything down, Dryden refused to cooperate. Local media caught wind of the standoff, turning it into a classic man versus the system story. But Dryden had made up his mind. He wasn't backing down. After many discussions and no resolution, the council decided to take a firmer stance. They would carry out the demolition themselves. On June 20th, 1991, Harry Collinson arrived at the site accompanied by workers, police officers, and a BBC crew to document the process. On the other side of the gate, Albert Dryden waited, determined, holding 2 letters he believed granted him the right to continue with the construction.
Read that. That's an official letter, and there's an appeal in. There's an inspector coming out on this site in 5 weeks' time.
No, it doesn't say that. I'll be ready to say
Well,
that.
I have another letter confirming that.
Can you show me the other
I'm
letter?
not going to show you the other letter, but this chap's coming out in 5 weeks' time.
Well,
all as I'm asking is to wait 5 weeks for the outcome, maybe 6 weeks. It'll take a week after he's been out.
I'm satisfied, Albert, that there's nothing in these documents that affects the legality of the enforcement notice that the inspector has confirmed.
Well, yes, Harry.
He asked for more time. No one listened. His frustration boiled over into something darker, something dangerous.
If you don't open the gate, now we'll obviously have to take the fence down with the machine. So if you want, you can have some time to remove the fence yourself to minimize the damage. Do you want to do that? Any damage that's subsequently caused as a result of you preventing us doing that will be your liability.
Well, you might not be around to see the outcome of this disaster. Now, you've been warned.
Can you explain what you mean by that, Albert?
Well, I'm not going to explain, but if you had any sense, you would go away now and wait 5 weeks for the outcome of that. Right? That's my last word on it.
If you show me the letter referring to the 5 weeks
I can't
delay,
show you the letter.
we will
I've
consider.
told you where the letter is.
According to the original plan, the team was meant to retreat and attempt a peaceful negotiation, but that plan quickly unraveled. Dryden began shouting angrily, warning Collinson not to set foot on his property. Despite the threats, Collinson held his position at the boundary line, determined to enforce the court's decision. That's when everything took a dark turn.
What the Lord don't know? Out of it. Go up there.
Can you get a shot at this gun?
Out of it.
Suddenly, Dryden drew a firearm and pointed it straight at Collinson. Remaining composed but alert, Harry told the BBC cameraman to keep recording, capturing exactly what was unfolding. Then, without hesitation,
Can you get a shot at this gun?
Out of it.
Dryden opened fire. The shot struck Collinson in the chest, killing him on the spot. He then turned the weapon toward the crowd and continued shooting.
As more shots were fired from a pistol, the camera crew and Look North reporter Tony Belmont ran for cover.
We were standing watching what was going on, and then a shot rang out. The chief kind of fell to the ground, and I felt a shot in the arm, and I've clearly been shot here in the arm.
Panic took over. Screams echoed. People scattered in every direction. Reporters hit the ground. Cameramen ducked for cover. One of them was Tony Belmont, a journalist filming from a distance. Later, he'd recall, "We heard the shot. The inspector went down. Then I felt a sting in my arm. I'd been hit." When the chaos cleared, 2 people were injured, a BBC journalist and a police officer. As for Harry Collinson, no one could even tell where he had fallen. His final words were lost in the panic.
Can you get a shot at this gun?
Out of it.
A tense standoff followed. Dryden claimed he'd rigged the property with explosives and booby traps, warning that any move toward the site would be fatal. It was all a bluff. After hours of negotiations, police finally moved in and arrested him without further incident. He was later sentenced to life in prison for murder. Over the years, Dryden developed a strange following. Some saw him as a man who stood up to a broken system, a misunderstood rebel. In 2017, after suffering a massive stroke, he was released on medical grounds. He died the following year. But the footage, that horrifying moment captured on camera, is burned into the memory of British broadcasting. And the name Albert Dryden still echoes in the darkest corners of true crime history. On the night of June 25, 2007, fans tuned in for a special 3-hour edition of WWE Monday Night Raw in Corpus Christi, Texas. The card was stacked. Big matches, big names. But one name was conspicuously missing: Chris Benoit. Just 2 days earlier, Benoit had told fellow wrestler Chavo Guerrero that his wife Nancy and their son Daniel were feeling sick, maybe just food poisoning. The next day he followed up, saying things had taken a turn for the worse. Nancy's condition had gotten more serious. Then, in the early hours before the show, Chavo received a series of bizarre texts from Benoit. They weren't about wrestling. They were directions to his house, notes about his dogs, and which doors were unlocked. It was strange, unsettling even. Chavo didn't reply. He figured they'd talk in person at the airport, but Benoit never showed.
Good evening. In reality, WWE superstar Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel are dead.
As the live broadcast drew closer, WWE officials received news that would shock the wrestling world. Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel were all found dead in their home. Stunned and unprepared, the company canceled the matches and turned the episode into a tribute to Benoit. At the time, no one had the full story. It was framed as a tragic family loss. Footage of Benoit's most iconic matches aired. Fellow wrestlers like Stone Cold, Cena, and CM Punk gave heartfelt messages celebrating his legacy, his work ethic, technical skill, and what they believed was his deep love for his family.
There was respect. It meant everything to him. Respect for this business, respect for the fans, respect for the wrestlers, respect for his family, respect for himself.
But not every tribute was the same. When William Regal stepped up to speak, the tone shifted. He didn't share memories or offer praise. His words were short, careful, detached.
At a later date, I'll be quite happy to sit here and tell you all the things about Chris Benoit that I'd like to tell you. But now all I'm willing to say is that Chris Benoit was undoubtedly the hardest working man in professional wrestling.
Turns out Regal had just been asked a chilling question backstage. Do you think he could have done it? The question came from John Bradshaw Layfield, and it shook him. Suddenly, things didn't feel right. That hesitation came through on live TV. And for many watching, that moment marked a turning point when admiration began to give way to suspicion.
You think he had anything to do with it?
Within hours, investigators revealed the horrifying truth. Chris Benoit had killed his wife and son, then taken his own life. Police reports said he sedated them, strangled them, and left Bibles next to their bodies.
We're now looking at this case and ruling it as a double homicide suicide. Evidence in the home leads us to believe that Mr. Benoit had murdered his wife by asphyxiation. Sometime shortly after that, the same for his son Daniel.
He then stayed in the house for over a full day before hanging himself. Later analysis of his brain revealed extreme trauma, damage comparable to that of an elderly Alzheimer's patient. The likely cause? Repeated concussions and head injuries from years inside the ring. He was diagnosed posthumously with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a condition now known to cause depression, paranoia, memory loss, and sometimes uncontrollable rage. Suddenly, the tribute from just hours before seemed haunting, misguided. This wasn't just a loss, it was a tragedy layered in pain, trauma, and unanswered questions. And then there was that promo, a chilling piece of footage recorded years before, meant to hype a match. At the time, no one thought much of it. But watching it now, knowing what we know, the cold stare, the rigid delivery, it all feels like something more. Like a man fighting demons we never saw. The story of Chris Benoit remains one of wrestling's darkest chapters. A reminder that behind the show, the stunts, the characters, there are real people carrying real pain.
My wife and my children will not be watching Raw. Because I am going to do something that is unthinkable. I'm going to leave you with my anger. Sleep well.
Almost 2 decades ago, a bizarre story began making the rounds in UK tabloids. At the center of it was a man who typically wouldn't attract public attention. He wasn't chasing fame. In fact, he preferred to stay out of the spotlight. But his lifestyle drew scrutiny for all the wrong reasons. He was nearly 50 at the time and had 15 kids, fathered with 5 different women. 2 of them lived in separate houses, and he split his time between them, creating a tangled romantic setup. But the real controversy wasn't about how many children he had or his unusual relationships. The real shocker? He didn't have a job and lived entirely on government assistance. While he stayed home, his partners, some of them pregnant, were out working full-time to support everyone. As strange as it all sounded, there was a much darker side to his story. He had a habit of targeting very young girls, often vulnerable ones. He manipulated them emotionally, got them pregnant, and took control of their lives. His current wife had just turned 18 when they got together, but she wasn't even the youngest. Years earlier, when he was 37, he began a relationship with a 14-year-old who ran off with him when she turned 16. There was also a long trail of abuse. He had a violent past, known for physically and emotionally assaulting women. In one of the worst cases, he stabbed an ex-girlfriend 12 times. When her mother tried to help, she was attacked too. His excuse, she was giving the baby too much attention. They both survived. He was sentenced to 7 years, served his time, and was released in the 80s, but nothing changed. He slipped right back into old habits, yet the government kept sending checks and he stayed out of prison. When the media circled back to him, the headlines focused on how many more children he'd had. He even complained about not getting enough in benefits and demanded more help. Eventually, he and 2 of his partners were invited to speak on a national talk show. That's when the public got a first-hand look at this twisted dynamic.
Go at me. I said your kids, when they came here today, were well-behaved and well-mannered and well-groomed. No newspapers said that, so you should be apologising to me, because I hadn't even started on you.
Listen, you want to start?
You start! You start! Do back here! Do back here! Are you sure? I did nothing.
During the show, both his wife and his girlfriend were interviewed about their life with him. To the shock of the audience, they claimed to be completely content and didn't see anything wrong with their arrangement.
Where is your dignity? You're 22. Don't you want a bloke to yourself? He just said, I agree with you. When you grew up, did you think you were going to share your bloke with another woman?
I didn't actually know. But 2 mums is better for all the kids.
Or confusing?
No.
The host seemed visibly disappointed. He was expecting arguments, confessions, or dramatic confrontations. Instead, he got 2 women calmly defending a man most people saw as a manipulative abuser. After the episode aired, interest in the story faded. The tabloids moved on, and the family returned to obscurity. That is, until May 12, 2012, when everything changed.
I can't get through making the kids yeah, Terrace House. Yeah, but we've got the police on the way. Have you any idea what's caused the fire? I've no idea, but it's been woke up by day long. There's smoke everywhere.
In the early hours of that morning, a fire tore through their home. He, his wife, and several children were inside when it started, and they managed to escape with a few of the kids, but 6 young children, all under 10, were trapped upstairs and died in the blaze. The tragedy dominated national headlines. The public responded with an outpouring of support. Local communities raised money for the funerals, and the couple appeared on television to thank the nation for its kindness.
I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it. To see this community to come together like they have, it's just too overwhelming. But there's one thing I would request is please leave my family alone. If you've got any questions or anything at all, please don't come through me or my family. Please go to the...
It could have ended as just a heartbreaking accident, but investigators noticed something off. Inside the burned home, they discovered gasoline residue in the mailbox, a clear sign the fire was deliberately set. And there was another twist. The man had a court hearing that very morning about custody of more children, this time from a previous relationship. Most people didn't even know he and that ex-girlfriend had been locked in a bitter legal battle for years. Suspicion quickly turned toward her. Maybe she'd set the fire out of revenge. That's exactly the narrative he wanted people to believe.
What you said? Tell me what you said to me. What you said about me trying to get in.
You tried everything you could to get in, like I said to him, I wanted to run through the flames, up the stairs.
Were you crying when you were saying it? How bad?
Not really, really bad, but I did cry.
That's hysterical.
There's a fingerprint on the window.
And that's it?
A few discrepancies. That's all it is.
It's my fault that half the family's gone. It's my fault we lost our children.
But the truth unraveled quickly. Police had bugged the hotel room where he and his wife were staying, and what they heard was horrifying. It turned out the fire was part of a plan. He, his wife, and a friend had conspired to set a small blaze, then heroically rescue the children, framing his ex in the process. Their goal? To make her look dangerous, get her locked up, and win custody of her kids too. But things spiraled. The fire spread too fast. They couldn't reach the children upstairs, and in a sick attempt to gain more kids, he ended up losing 6 of his own. Looking back at that talk show episode now is chilling. Seeing the 3 of them, him, his wife, and his ex, sitting there on stage laughing and answering questions. No one knew the darkness that was coming. 2 of them would go on to commit one of the most twisted crimes imaginable, all for control, image, and manipulation. This time, though, there's no escape. He was sentenced to life in prison, right where he belongs.